Today, the Middle East is literally a boiling cauldron. And here to talk about that cauldron, which, by the way, is well covered in Bible prophecy, is our good friend Bill Koenig. Bill, welcome back to Prophecy Watch.
Gary, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Tell people who you are, what you do, your connection with people in Washington, D.C.
21 years ago, we started an internet news service in Dallas that focused on Israel and the Middle East, world news that's biblically relevant. And in 2001, moved to Washington, D.C., and was able to start working out of the White House during President Bush's beginning of his term. So I have been a White House correspondent for 18 years. This is the third administration that I've covered. And I continue to have a great interest in Israel, the Middle East, and how rapidly final day events are playing out. And I've had the opportunity to be there with every major leader of the world for their meetings with the president. So it's been an extraordinary place to be.
And by the way, Bill has written this book, Revealed, Obama's Legacy, and that leads me to a question. How do you view Donald Trump as a leader? Obama's legacy was certainly well defined by the time he left office. When Trump came in, it was kind of love him or hate him. I've never seen such a divisive character in my life, but he went right to work. And let's talk about the Trump foreign policy and how you view this in terms of Bible prophecy. What's the Lord doing?
Well, the Trump foreign policy, first of all, Gary, as we've talked about before, he had to go in there and deal with a lot of the mistakes that previous administrations had made, whether it's Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, or President Obama. And his priorities were off and wrong. He was obsessed with getting rid of don't ask, don't tell. According to the Secretary of Defense, Gates, he was more interested in getting rid of that than the readiness of our troops and military around the world. The morale was horrible. Christian chaplains, many had left the military, and it was in a shambles. President Trump came in and surrounded himself with generals. General Mattis received a 98-1 vote in his Senate approval during the approval process. It's extraordinary, and he's been the absolute perfect person at this time with the serious threats that we're dealing with in the Middle East, with Iran, Hezbollah, ISIS. The Pentagon and the generals in the Middle East have done a phenomenal job dealing with the threat of ISIS, along with our boots in the ground, the Kurdish people. And also just sending a message to North Korea, we're not going to put up with you being a nuclear power, which has been significant.
And Kim Jong-un literally has said he's ready to talk now.
Well, he's ready to talk, Gary, and Claire Lopez and a few other former CIA people aren't convinced that he will cooperate. But I tell you what, when Trump and Mattis are involved and the tough negotiators of having John Bolton, National Security Advisor, he's going to be dealing with, the North Korean president going to be dealing with a whole different cast of leaders than he has in the past. They're not going to be able to pull off what they have with previous U.S. administrations.
Now, we're talking in early April, and the news today, and by the way, it's news that more or less continues at a rumble, a rumbling pace day by day. Strange things are happening in the Middle East, and those infamous barrel bombs, chemical warfare against the people of Syria. What's happening there? How do we interpret this? What do you hear?
It is extraordinary what is happening right now in the Middle East. And it's happening at a breathtaking pace. Gary, we've been watching this buildup for a long period of time. But the relationship between Russia, Turkey, and Iran, having to do with their relationships and also having to do with Syria. Russia telling the United States, don't dare respond to this recent gassing of Syrians. The fact that this time when Israel went in and fired those missiles into Iran facilities just outside of Damascus, Israel told the United States but didn't tell Russia. So they weren't real happy about that. And then this big meeting just recently of those three leaders, Putin, Erdogan, and Rouhani, in Turkey. At the same week that President Trump said he wants to get out of Syria as soon as possible. Well, the General Mattis, General Dunbar went there and spent most of the day saying this is not the right time to do it. And then this weekend activity again is showing that that is not going to happen soon. And that's fortunate because by having the United States in northeast Syria, it's stopping the Iranian land bridge that goes all the way from Iran to the Mediterranean Sea. So the key here is all the final day nations, and I'm watching them very closely daily, what they're saying, what they're doing, their activities in the Middle East, in Syria especially, Yemen, in other areas of the Middle East is very prophetically significant. It's not going to slow down and go back in the other direction. It's going to keep building and accelerating as we watch what's taking place in Israel and around Israel.
Surrounding Syria and Damascus, you have Turkey, you have Iran, and you have Russia to the north. And all the major players are there, the ones in Ezekiel 38, and the ones spoken of in Jeremiah, in Daniel. I mean, everywhere where you look in Old Testament prophecy, you see these major players. And in Isaiah 17, you see Syria as the focal point of something pretty bad, the movement of armies in a very rapid fashion, the destruction of the city of Damascus.
Isaiah 17:1, that is a huge event. As you said before, that event of Isaiah 17:1, the destruction of the city of Damascus, is enormous.
Now, Bashar al-Assad, and let's talk about him as a man for just a moment, because he's a very curious guy, in my opinion. Well-educated, went to England, became an ophthalmologist, obviously very intelligent, speaks fluent English, dresses in a Western style, and loves his wealth and loves his power, but he seems to be an absolute beast. Who is this guy, and what's happening with him?
Well, his father, Hafiz Assad, was known as a butcher, in the bad sense of the term. Many people had been killed within his own country during his reign. When people saw Bashar Assad coming on, they saw this tall, lanky ophthalmologist who was married to a woman from the UK, thinking this is going to be a good day for Syria, a good day for the Middle East, and won't be a threat to the region. Well, fast forward, and we're talking about a country that's seen between 300,000 and 400,000 people killed over the last 7+ years. We've seen Russia and Iran further entrenched in Syria. We have seen a horrible, horrible civil war. We've seen millions of people leave the country. They're in refugee camps in Jordan and Lebanon, and they've also infiltrated throughout Europe. And we do have some of those people here in the United States. So it's been a disaster. Russia and China has not stood up. All they've done is defended Assad. They have stopped any type of meaningful resolutions and sanctions at the UN level against Syria. And we have a real significant mess. And we have Iran attempting to move missiles and more rockets into Hezbollah, which is about 150,000 now that are pointed at Israel, into Syria, into Lebanon, for the future of destroying the Zionist country of Israel at some point.
As I got ready to come in here and do this program with Bill today, I was watching the news, flipping around, and lo and behold, in the Middle East, another mass gas attack. At this point in time, we don't even know how that's going to turn out. It's still developing, even as we're sitting here right now. One of many to come, probably, but it's very difficult for me to understand where we are right now. What in the world is happening? Obviously, there's a positioning for power of some sort by people who want to take all the marbles, and how that's going to turn out biblically is fairly clear.
The big concern, Gary, right now in Syria is the amount of troops that are there from other countries. We have Russian troops, we have Iranian troops, we have U.S. troops, along with our allies, some of the Kurds, and the Turkish troops. And the Turkish troops have gone into this Afrin area and have created a disaster. Iran is using basically surrogate troops from Pakistan and Afghanistan to come. They don't want Iranians to be in the front line. They're bringing those people in and paying these somewhat, you can almost call them mercenaries, into fight in Syria against those that oppose the Assad government. And at the same time, you have Hezbollah that has 150,000 rockets that are pointed at Israel. So, here's a country the size of New Jersey that a direct hit on Haifa and Tel Aviv, which an Iranian leader said a couple weeks ago, Hezbollah is capable now of wiping out Haifa and Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. So, Israel obviously has the best intelligence in the world and has to for the state of their own personal security.
Sure.
Are well aware of what's being done, well aware of what's being said. They're eavesdropping on the phone calls. They have people on the ground in those countries. There's going to have to be something that happens soon to stop this threat that's getting more and more serious every day that puts the future of the state of Israel at risk.
And here we are at a crucial time in history, approaching the 70th birthday of national Israel, and that cannot be coincidental.
Absolutely. On a Jewish calendar, April 18th through the 20th is Israel's 70th anniversary celebration for a period of 70 hours. And then on our calendar, May 14 will be the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. Mm-hmm. And 70 obviously is a very significant generational number.
Oh, yeah.
Biblically. And also we're in the 50th year of Israel's total unification of the city of Jerusalem, God's ultimate time clock. So it's a huge year. On May 14th, we're going to announce the opening of our embassy in Jerusalem, the United States Embassy, which is huge news.
Hamas, the leaders, and talk about that a bit, because Hamas is making trouble right now, even as we speak. And they said we will brook no nonsense when it comes to moving that embassy. We will not allow that to happen. They've sort of declared war almost.
Well, Hamas is reeling right now. The situation in Gaza is a total disaster because of Hamas. The money's being diverted to their military programs when it should be used for this civilian disaster of unique and massive proportion. A couple weeks ago, Kushner, son-in-law of Trump, had Arab leaders in to discuss the humanitarian crisis that they have in Gaza and what to do about it. There was a Saudi leader, Emirates leader, Egyptian, Jordanian, and even Qatar, who previously has been very supportive of the Hamas-Gaza situation. So this is a disaster. So anytime Hamas's backs to wall, they start trying to provoke a war with Israel to get international money to come in and help rebuild the country that's been devastated when they start firing rockets and missiles, or especially rockets, at Israeli people. So it's aligning.
As you look at the Bible, Isaiah 17, that talks about the destruction of Damascus, has some fascinating descriptive passages at the end of the chapter. It says, "Woe to the multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the seas and the rushing of the nations. They make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters." We're not talking about a tiny little clash here. We're talking about a major conflagration of some sort.
It is huge.
And the next verse says, "The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters." And you go down to the last verse, it says, "And behold, at eveningtide trouble, and before the morning he is not." Now, I've kind of skipped through about 3 verses there, but that doesn't sound like anything that could have happened in Isaiah's day. It sounds latter day. In other words, high-tech, aerial invasion, rocketry, you name it. Things can happen in a hurry, and it says in a 24-hour period this is going to happen to Damascus.
Without a doubt, and I'm watching the catalyst. I think the biggest catalyst right now is what's Russia going to do in the event the United States gets more involved in Syria. They've already warned us. Iran warns us. Iran is, their leader, Rouhani, just stated a couple days ago that if the United States gets out of the Iranian nuke deal that Obama and these other leaders of Europe put together, that they're going to start back on their nuclear program ASAP. But the main purpose right now, what Trump wants with the Iran nuke deal, is these ballistic missiles that Iran is developing that puts every single Sunni Arab country that borders the Persian Gulf at risk, and that's 25% of our daily oil at risk. And that's his main objective. And he's got the French, the British, and the Germans right now saying Trump is serious. So we need to do more in this agreement to stop Iran's ballistic missile development program, which they're not going to accept. So that sounds like the Iran nuke deal is on the outs. Mm-hmm. So you have that and Iran's threats and their terroristic threats and their threats of attacking Haifa or Tel Aviv, and then you have Russians saying, United States, don't respond to this gassing of Assad, otherwise there's going to be consequences. I mean, this is getting pretty serious.
Yeah, and you've just mentioned Iran, which is biblical Persia, and Russia, which I think is mentioned in the Bible as Gog, because it's the land of the uttermost parts of the north. It just seems like it has to be.
There is no doubt, Gary, Russia is a major final day player. The leadership of Putin, who just got reelected for another 6-year term, there is no doubt Russia is a major player.
Putin wants to be appreciated like a movie star. Loves it, the fur coats, and the gold chains around the neck and the whole nine. Yeah, he loves to be a personality, and you could almost look at him and say, there goes a civilized man, somebody you might have conversation with.
Well, it's been really interesting ever since the attempted attack on that former Russian and his daughter inside the UK when the United States and other countries started expelling diplomats. Mm-hmm. And also publicly chastised Putin for the Russian government's role in this poisoning of a former Russian spy inside of the UK, is sending a message to Putin, we're not going to put up with it. And also recently, President Trump had a meeting in the East Room of the White House with the president of Estonia, Lithuania, and Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. Mm-hmm. In a sign of unity with these countries that Russia also has an eye on. So Russia obviously is a big player. Russia is very possibly going to test NATO, who they believe is a paper tiger, without the United States. So this is going to be a very important decision by the Trump administration and the military leaders and our security officials on what to deal with the Russian threat. And I tell you, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and others, members of Congress, are very serious about dealing with Russia. So how is Russia and Putin going to respond? And obviously our biggest concern about Russia is their nuclear weapon capability. But this leadership and administration of Washington, as you know, Gary, is not going to put up with it. And this will be very interesting going forward, how Russia responds to that.
You're going to have a lot to talk about this fall at the second annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum. That's October 12th through 14th this year. And take a look at this little bit of film we have for you, and then I've got another question for Bill. Our second annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum is not far away, and here to talk about it, Bob Ulrich.
The Prophecy Watchers are coming back to Norman, Oklahoma. October 12th through 14th, 2018, we're going to be back with 30 of the leading names in Bible prophecy. I'm sure you recognize many of the names: Gary Stearman, Tommy Ice, L.A. Marzulli, David Reagan, Jan Markell, Bill Koenig, Don Perkins, Andy Woods, Gary Frazier, Bill Salas. It's literally one of the biggest one-of-a-kind prophecy conferences in the world today.
It is, Bob. In a year, the year 2018, which just happens to be prophetically important.
30 speakers delivering over 60 messages. You can register for this great event at prophecywatchers.com, or you can call our ministry toll-free at 888-722-0008.
Bill, we've sort of, in a broad brush way, laid out what's happening in the Middle East. We got to oil a minute ago. And there's a sort of a triangular-shaped patch of land that goes from Saudi Arabia up to the north and to the northwest that has a very large percent of the world's oil. Tell us about that.
A good friend of mine, attorney in New York City, Mark Langfin, who's the president of American for Safe Israel, put together a triangular map that showed that 55% of the world's proven reserves are in that area over the Persian Gulf. That's Iran, that's Iraq, that's the United Arab Emirates, it's Qatar, it's Saudi Arabia. And all those countries, for the most part, the leadership of those countries are Sunni Arabs. And the hate between the Sunni and Shiite Arabs, or no, let me put it this way, the hate between the Sunni and Shiite Muslims is extraordinary. The Persians, the Shiite Persians, have their form of Islam, which is about 15% of the Muslims in the world are Shiite, and 80 to 85% are Sunni Arabs. And the dislike of each other is significant. So if there, and this is a threat that they used back in 2012, Iran said, if you touch us or hit us, Israel, we are going to send missiles into the refineries that border the Persian Gulf, shut down the Persian Gulf, and that's our threat. That's 25% of the daily oil. Look what happened in July of 2008 when oil hit $147 a barrel. It devastated our economy. 2 of our major automobile companies were bankrupt. You imagine a disruption of the oil, the 25% of the daily oil that goes through the Persian Gulf? Well, Iran's got a very extraordinary, significant threat capability there. So that's what they've been using. You hit us, we're going to shut down the Persian Gulf and send missiles into those refineries in northeast Saudi Arabia where most of their oil is refined, and we're going to shut down that oil. It would be a disaster.
It would be World War III, may I say. It sounds like World War III to me. The repercussions of that thing would bounce off all the countries around the world. I'd like to take just a moment to mention Bill's book and DVD called Eye to Eye. This set, we've offered this set before. If you don't have it, you really need to avail yourself of the information. What's in Eye to Eye?
Eye to Eye is 577 pages of what happens when U.S. presidents attempt to pressure Israel to divide their land, and the enormous catastrophes happen the same day or within 24 hours.
Wow.
Most of them within 24 hours.
And Bill has a way of looking at the world that I don't think I've ever seen anybody else have. I think the Lord's gifted you to see the connections between Bible prophecy and the events in daily life. You really have an eye for that sort of thing.
Well, thank you, Gary. And it's interesting is every time we put pressure on Israel, the greater the corresponding catastrophe. I've seen even hurricanes go back out to the ocean when our presidents, whether it was George W. Bush or Obama, stating we will not pressure Israel or the Palestinians to make peace. We saw Hurricane Earl September 1 and 2 developing the size of Texas, heading towards Washington, D.C. When Obama made that statement, it went back to the ocean and died. It's land that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it's not to be touched. And every Middle East leader that's come against Israel has had a tragic ending. Every Israeli prime minister that's agreed with the peace process has either had his government collapse or been indicted. It is extraordinary.
And speaking of Obama, you've also revealed Obama's legacy. And Obama's legacy, I think, has set in motion a lot of what we're seeing today. Right?
Absolutely. People appreciate the fact that, number one, is they had a general idea what was going on or what was happening, but they had no idea of the depth of what took place. Things that affected Christians, faith on his terms, his LGBT agenda, his attitude about Islam. He did more about being a proponent, as a backer of Islam than any American president. And he more than a few times chastised Christians. It's a very comprehensive address on how we became who we are and where we are to this day, and the challenges that the Trump administration has had to deal with. People have read the book of both ilks, whether liberal or conservative, and appreciate the fairness of how I wrote the book. At the same time, I used his words most of the time to explain to people what happened during his time in office.
The books, Eye to Eye, the DVD, Eye to Eye, and revealed Obama's legacy have just a wealth of information from a gentleman who is a an accredited member of the Washington Press Corps. It has a unique perspective, I must say. Now, we're offering these 3 books for your gift of $50 to Prophecy Watchers, free shipping anywhere in the United States. Check the online bookstore. Just scroll down. You'll find Bill Koenig's name, and you will find the presidential package in the bookstore, and that's what we have named these 3 books. Now, if you have them already, I'd like to make you another offer. We have here 32 DVDs, 62 messages, the first annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference. You were a part of that too. A very large venue with prophetic perspective from every area, every angle you can possibly imagine. And if you don't have these DVDs from our Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum, listen, what can I say? Lots of interesting Bible study there. I've looked at a lot of these myself. I'm still in the process of looking at a lot of them. I'm always amazed at what people were saying, even a few months ago, that I had kind of forgotten. So if you want to renew your acquaintanceship with the Prophecy Conference, maybe you came to the conference, didn't get the DVD set, we are offering that Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum DVD set to you for $129.95, free shipping anywhere in the United States. If you buy those DVDs from last year's Prophecy Forum for $129.95, free shipping anywhere in the United States, we're also going to give you these items with that. So you'll have, I think, more information than you can possibly consume in a while, but good information. Bill, we've got to talk a little bit more because we've just, I think, scratched the surface, and we'll do another program with Bill. But going out today, this feels very much like something catastrophic is in the breeze. I don't want to be negative, but I've got a funny feeling in the pit of my stomach about what's happening in the Middle East right now.
Well, absolutely, Gary. You know, we've been following this for many, many years. You 40 plus, me 30. And we're at one of the most exciting periods in biblical prophetic history. And we're blessed to fully understand the scriptures that have to do with the days that we're living in and what to watch. And I watched 7 world leaders: President Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, Putin, Crown Prince Salman from Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah from Jordan, Khamenei from Iran, and Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan.
Bill, I think you have suggested what we should do on our next program. I want to talk about those 7 men. And let's do that.
Yes, look forward to it.
And his name is Bill Koenig, always absolutely up to date on what's going on. I'm Gary Stearman. You keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.